Does the math that's supposed to protect your family still add up? Or are we all just plugging numbers into a calculator that was built for a world that no longer exists? Because the replacement ratio and the human life value method have been the twin pillars of financial planning for decades. And right now, some very serious people are asking whether those pillars are cracking. Let's rewind to where these ideas came from, because context matters more than most advisors will admit. The replacement ratio, the idea that you need roughly 70 to 90% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle, was popularized in the 1970s and 80s, an era of pensions, single-income households, and relatively predictable inflation. Human life value, the concept that your economic worth equals the present value of your future earnings, dates back even further, rooted in a time when most Americans worked linear careers at one company until they retired or died, whichever came first. Here's the problem. We are not living in that world anymore. And yet these frameworks are still being handed out like gospel at every financial planning seminar from Tulsa to Tucson. The economy has shape-shifted around these metrics, while the metrics themselves just stood there, frozen, like a financial Miss Havisham refusing to acknowledge that the clock stopped decades ago. The replacement ratio made a quiet assumption that your spending would naturally decrease in retirement. And for the greatest generation, that was largely true. But today's retirees are traveling, starting businesses, paying for their adult children's down payments, and covering healthcare costs that would have made someone in 1980 faint on the spot. Healthcare alone is doing things to retirement math that no textbook predicted with any real accuracy. Fidelity estimated that a couple retiring today could need over $300,000 just for medical expenses in retirement, a number that the original replacement ratio model essentially waved away with a polite nod. And then there's the human life value method, which sounds very dignified and important until you realize it completely falls apart when applied to a gig worker, a stay-at-home parent, a freelancer, or anyone whose income looks less like a straight line and more like an EKG readout. Critics like economist and author Moshe Milevsky have pushed back on these blunt instruments for years, arguing that longevity risk, sequence of returns risk, and behavioral finance have made cookie-cutter ratios dangerously oversimplified for the modern household. Now, to be fair, and we should be fair here, these frameworks aren't useless. They're just misused, which is a very important distinction that gets lost in the debate. A replacement ratio of 80% is still a reasonable starting point for a conversation, the same way a map from 2005 is still useful for finding the highway, even if it doesn't show you the new toll lanes. The deeper irony is that the very simplicity that made these tools popular is also what makes them dangerous in the hands of someone who treats them as a finish line rather than a starting point. There's something almost poetic about a financial planning concept that works perfectly until the moment someone actually tries to rely on it. History gives us some humbling precedent here. Think about how the 4% withdrawal rule, another widely trusted planning benchmark, was stress tested against historical data from a relatively narrow window of American market prosperity. Every generation thinks its data sample is universal, and every generation eventually learns, sometimes expensively, that it was not. So what do we actually do with this information, practically speaking? The answer isn't to throw the ratios in the trash, it's to treat them as one data point among many, rather than the authoritative verdict on your financial security. A smarter approach layers these traditional metrics with dynamic spending models, Monte Carlo simulations, and honest conversations about what your retirement actually looks like on a Tuesday in February versus a postcard from Tuscany. The discipline isn't in the ratio itself, it's in revisiting your assumptions every few years with the same rigor you'd apply to any other long-term project you actually care about. Here's the philosophical truth that no ratio can capture. Financial planning isn't a math problem, it's a values problem dressed up in a math costume. And the numbers only mean something in the context of the life you're trying to protect. Discipline, consistency, and the willingness to recalibrate are worth more than any single metric ever invented. The replacement ratio and human life value still matter. They just matter the way a compass matters on a hike, where you also have a GPS, a trail map, and a friend who's done the route before. Use them, respect them, but for the love of your future self, Do not let them be the only thing standing between you and a plan that actually fits your life. And if you're ready to take the next step in building real, lasting financial security, whether that's through real estate investing, home contracting, work, or finding the right lenders, check out our links in the description below, and let's get you started.